from the cannons. When the smoke clears, we're still standing. Yes, we stand our ground.
You're listening to Everlasting Veteran.
When the smoke clears.
Welcome, everybody, to Everlasting Veteran. I am your host, Ryan Landry, also known as Wind Talker. I have a great guest here today, Rob Sweetman. He is a sleep genius. He is a former Navy SEAL. He joined the Navy at 28 years old and completed BUDS Class 284. And he's here to talk about his journey through the military, his transition out, and what has inspired him to travel around and help people with their sleep and other ailments in which they deal with on a daily basis to better their lives, better the person that they are. Rob, thank you so much for coming on, and I appreciate you taking the time out of your day.
Thanks, Ryan. Let me just say that I'm in Times Square right now, New York City, one of the finest cities in the world. And we're here not only to support SEAL Future Foundation, but also to support the SEAL Swim that we're going to do in August here to raise money for veterans and first responders. This actually does not go to my nonprofit. It goes directly to the Navy SEAL Foundation, as well as the Uncommon Grit Foundation. So this money is going straight to them. So I'll drop some links later, but if people can actually support this swim, we're going to swim across the Hudson into Manhattan. It's crazy. So we're here doing planning for that.
So go into a little bit how you wanted to get into the military and inspired you to become a Navy SEAL.
Well, that's a good question. I didn't really know what I wanted to do. You know, a lot of folks have that decision like right after high school. Like, oh, do I go to college? Do I go to the military? And I've always felt like a patriot, and I've always felt a calling towards the military, towards combat, towards being a warrior. I feel like somewhere down the line, like Braveheart is in my family tree. Who knows? But I felt this draw. However, I didn't do it after high school. I didn't do it, and I kind of regretted that. It stuck with me. What I chose to do was become an entrepreneur and, cut my teeth in business. And I did that. A ton of successes, ton of failures. I became a part of the community, but I got a little bit bored with where I was at. And it wasn't until 28 years old, I'd already established myself, had a house, lived downtown Greenville, South Carolina, had a friends network, was part of many organizations. And I said, you know what? I'm just going to give up everything and give it a shot. Like this, and this might be my last shot, because at 28 years old, that's the cutoff before you need a waiver. I'm not sure what the rules are now, but at the time, I needed to sign that dotted line if I wanted to do something before I turned 29. So I did. At 28 years old, I signed with the Navy. At the time, they were offering a SEAL contract. So you didn't have to go into the Navy and become a boatswain's mate or a yeoman or whatever type of job is available for the Navy SEAL Warfare Designator, or at least the BUDS. But you could actually get a 5326 contract. You just had to prove your physical ability. So I was still in shape. I was still training and fighting jiu-jitsu, but this is back in 2009. And I just said, all right, let's do this. I signed the dotted line. I stayed in the DEP program for about 6 months. And then I finally shipped out in 2010. I arrived in Coronado, bright-eyed and bushy-tailed, unaware of the depths of of training that I would experience. Turned 29, went through BUDS at 29 years old, and finished that December. And the rest is history. They say that it never gets easier, and that's true. We all hoped that BUDS would be the end of the suffering and the cold and wet nights. No, there's a reason why they did that. They did that so that they know who is going to be able to perform the job. So yeah, 8 years in the teams. There was never, the only easy day was yesterday, as they say. So
Hmm. Yeah, and during your journey through being a SEAL, you sustained some injuries, visible and not. How did you deal with those? And then when you went through your transition, continue to improve yourself as you went through and dealing with that.
yeah, I mean, all of us get banged up in the teams. Any type of special forces gig is going to be hard on you, hard on the joints, hard on the back. Um, in the SEAL teams, we have a particular constellation of injuries that are similar across the entire force. That was outlined in the seminal work of Dr. Free called the Operator Syndrome. And he talks about this unique constellation of injuries. And a lot of them are hidden. For example, SEALs are masters of explosives. They are taught to be able to handle those things, very dangerous things, to be able to execute specific missions. But the challenge with always dealing with this type of stuff is that when you're close to the blast, there's a material safe distance, but when you're within that, and probably when you're outside of that, but that's just the safety measurement that they offer, you will you'll take on some damage in the brain and in the heart. And, there's a big talk about traumatic brain injury from blast exposure. I think that's pretty common with team guys. It's pretty common with anybody who's exposed to this extreme overpressure. But for team guys, in almost every situation, they're coming out with astroglial scarring in the brain. So that was me, me and all my buddies. I also developed some bad habits, whether it's from just the op tempo of being in the teams or from nighttime missions or just terrible watch schedules. Partly the culture. There's a culture surrounding like we don't need sleep. But I developed some pretty bad habits where I was never getting adequate sleep, and I always felt like I was tired, and I'm always like drinking Monsters and Red Bulls and Rip Its on deployment to be able to feel like I'm back in the game. And then when you do that, you're amped up, and whenever you do get a chance to go to bed, you can't. And so then you do things like eat Ambien or drink alcohol to go to sleep. And this behavior, this cycle is vicious, and it gets worse and worse. And eventually you find yourself down the road relying on, depressants and stimulants to sort of force you through the sleep cycle. And now, fast forward, at the time I didn't know, but now I know that that is really bad, and it will get worse. And as you're not getting good sleep and recovery, it begins to tear down the body, and you start to see issues. My issues before I left service, I was already starting to struggle. I can't imagine folks that deal with stuff for 30 years throughout a career, but it was only 8 years for me, and I was already spent. I was starting to gain weight. My hormones were all over the place. I wasn't sleeping well, definitely drinking too much. I was a train wreck. And so those injuries, sleep related, whether that's from PTSD or whether that's from just negative neural pathways, just meaning like routines within the brain that have a negative outcome in my life, or the traumatic brain injury. We have all these different things that you really can't see or feel or touch or observe. You can only observe the symptoms. The VA definitely does not have the tools to address these things. However, they do care. They will talk to you, and they will, write down your symptoms and say, oh, well, it looks like you have symptoms of TBI and PTSD and sleep-related issues. Okay, here, take this pill. That's not the solution, by the way. So I'm getting out of service, and I've got all these hidden injuries, and it really became something that I needed to take ownership on to be able to solve. The VA is there to help us, but they really don't have the tools to correctly address a lot of the things, specifically with special forces and the operator syndrome. They haven't even acknowledged the operator syndrome to date. So I took it on myself. That became my journey 5 or 6 years ago as I transitioned to fix myself.
Yeah, I've seen a lot of and read up on a lot of the stuff that you're doing. That's why I reached out to you, because not only with the military, but also with first responders working shift work or working multiple hours and not getting proper sleep and having to take, coffee and Monster and try to get through your shift of 8 hours or 16 hours, rinse and repeat. It's going to cause long-term health effects and damaging health problems down the road. And I know for me, working nights and having to either, have a Monster, a Red Bull, or a coffee, trying to wake yourself up so you can at least get through, 8 hours, then trying to get home and turn the switch off and go right to bed. So then you're up, when the family comes home, it becomes very, very difficult. And I've been doing it for 10 years now on nights and somewhat have gotten a handle on it, but I can never find that complete balance between working nights, the shift work, then rotating back to try to be up during the day on my weekends. And I think it's a good blend of what you're doing. And I know that you go around and you talk to military and also first responders, and it's a good informational tool, something to put in your toolbox, like we spoke about before, to help you not rely on medication or rely on stimulants to get you going or bring you down so you can go to sleep. What are some of the techniques that you've been working on to be able to help others get through that and not rely on medication or energy drinks and get the proper sleep they need to get through their day?
Yeah. The schedule that you described, Ryan, is, I have to be honest with you, man. It is a very difficult schedule on your body. What we know from research, the Navy has paid for a lot of research with Naval Postgraduate School and Dr. Nita Shattuck and all the great work the crew endurance team has done over there. But when they analyzed the shifting of sleep schedules, it has a deleterious effect that you can't quite pick up on just through analysis of sleep deprivation. So sleep deprivation would be like, okay, you're not getting enough sleep. That's one thing. But if you're shifting your sleep schedule, what we found is that if we have a number of different circadian rhythms in our body, let's say one is for testosterone, right? And one is for cortisol, one is for melatonin, and this and that. If you look at a hormones map, if you just Google hormones map, you can see that it's extremely complex. And each one of these things, each one of these functions within the body has its own rhythm, its own circadian rhythm. Circadian, right? It's meant to be on a 24-hour day. That's how we're wired. That's how we're designed. But what we found in the Navy ship analysis, what they were looking at was five and dimes, like 5 hours on, 10 hours off. Then, when they're getting that sleep period, and that's a 15-hour day, they're shifting and ratcheting their sleep period every single day, and that caused the hormones and all of these different functions within the body to be out of synchronization. And when they're out of sync, after a period of time, you start to see issues, endocrine issues. We've seen hypertension rates go up, even cancer rates go up. In fact, the World Health Organization has labeled shift work as a probable carcinogen, just meaning that it's likely that it will cause cancer. So I just want to say that in good faith because, I love you, brother, and I appreciate and honor the work that you're doing. It's hard work. It's very, very hard work. And, you are paying the price for that. Like the things that you feel probably throughout the shifting back and forth, those are real. It's not. It's real stress on the body. So what can we do to try to alleviate some of that shift work strain and stress? Shifting your sleep schedule dramatically in less than a 3 week period of time is going to be hard on your body. But what we want to do is try to build some level of consistency within our sleep schedule so that our body has a chance to keep up and recover. So, what I'll talk to you about for a couple seconds is polyphasic sleeping. And polyphasic sleeping is not something that's recommended for the average person. Why not just get a regular 8-hour sleep period or maybe a 6-hour sleep period with a nap to supplement? But we're not talking about a normal person with a normal sleep period. We're talking about shift work. And if you have shift work, polyphasic sleeping all of a sudden becomes very attractive. Now, polyphasic sleeping just means that you have multiple phases of sleeping, which means that you might have one sleep period at this time and another sleep period at that time. So without going into detail on a specific sleep plan for a schedule like you described, I would say for the folks out there who are working shifts, if there's any way that they can build in a sleep period that is consistent both when they are maybe like in that transition period between work and home, if that window, even if it's 2 or 3 hours, if that window is consistent every single day, if we can lock down that window, that's better than shifting the sleep period constantly. And the big thing that we have to break through is the barrier of understanding of like, oh, I need an 8-hour sleep period straight. That's how I sleep. That's the only way to sleep. No, polyphasic sleeping teaches us that we can get a 2 or 3 hour sleep period or a 4-hour sleep period, but as long as it's consistent, that is going to give our body the chance to build so it starts to expect that, right? And so if we want to do, let's say, a 2 or 3 hour sleep period before a nighttime shift, and then you know that you can get that same 2 or 3 hour sleep period, you talk with your wife and family and say, okay, I'm going to try this, I'm going to do this. So it's going to be a little bit weird, but I'm going to go to sleep at this time, even if it's during the day. You can put on a face mask and earplugs. The consistency of that 2 or 3 hour sleep period is going to reap benefits. Now, that's not enough sleep, right? We need maybe another 2 or 3 hour sleep period. Maybe that's at the end of the shift. But the point is, whatever we choose, only you can decide how much sleep you need to recover. For me, I'm a 7-hour and 15-minute kind of guy. But if you take naps, sometimes a 20-minute nap can equal 2 hours of sleep. It's a turbocharged sleep period. So you really have to play with it and try different things. But it is absolutely possible to improve your body's function in terms of sleep recovery by doing a sleep period that might not seem normal, like 2 or 3 hours, like what are you doing? But if you can nail that every single day, regardless of whether you're on shift or you're at home, that is going to pay dividends. It's going to pay dividends. So I know that kind of sounds a little bit out there, and that might sound like very difficult to accomplish. But I'm just trying to talk about what the science is leading us to know about good health when you have shift work. So hope that's helpful.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that goes along the same lines of maintaining a good routine, whether you're shift work or not.
Yeah.
Maintaining a good routine for yourself is good for the mental status, your mental health as well. And I've tried to sleep as soon as I get home. I've tried stay up a couple hours, then go to sleep. Sometimes it's difficult because you got stuff you plan on the weekend with your family, and then it's all thrown off. But yeah, I think that would be beneficial. I know some guys, they do the nap here and the nap there. You know, th- like me this past weekend, my body just went into straight crash and said, you need to sleep. And, the majority of the day till like maybe 1 p.m., I was sleeping, and, then you get up, you feel, groggy and, kind of useless. You're in that fog all the time, and it's just because there's not that consistency. And plus, every 6 weeks, the weekends rotate back a day, so like your weekends aren't the same days. So I find it interesting, and I've been trying to do more stuff because, um, for an extended period of time, or short period of time, I'd be using like Advil PM, some supplement to try to make me groggy and be able to go to sleep. And I've noticed over the years that it hurts me more versus helps me with getting sleep, because you wake up and you're completely out of it, and your thought processes are not connecting the same. So that I really, really want to dive into it more. Maybe we can have like another episode where we can really dive into it and get that knowledge out there. What is some of the breathing techniques, because you've talked about that before, the breathing techniques to help with high stress situations that military members or first responders can maybe use for their job to help them out?
Yeah, so 62r.org is the hyperlink for 62 Romeo. 62 Romeo is a program that we put veterans and first responders through, where we teach them everything about sleep. We help them get to their sleep goals. And one of the things that we add in there is these relaxation techniques, which are partly breathing and partly turn into a little bit of guided meditation. But we don't talk about that because those labels and those words sometimes make people feel uncomfortable. It's like, what is this woo-woo, meditation, yoga stuff? So we kind of white label that stuff as hardcore breathing techniques, right? And we just want to show them the results, and then they can make up their own mind about how they feel about it. So one of my favorites that we do in the 62 Romeo program, and I love to do every morning, is called box breathing. I first learned that one in the SEAL teams. And in essence, you pick an amount of time to build your box, and the box is like a square, and the square has four sides. And each side, for example, if you want to start out with a 4-second breath, that would be breathe in for 4 seconds, and then hold it, breathe out for 4 seconds, and then hold it. So those are four different parts to the breathing exercise, and they each have a 4-second hold, right? Or a 4-second breathe in, hold, breathe out, hold. So one of the techniques to that one, one of the points of performance, is that we want to start by emptying out all of the air in our lungs first. So we breathe it all out. And then as we breathe in, we want to breathe in through the diaphragm, expand the belly. All right. And we want to get a full lung of air by the time we get to the top of the box, right? So if we have no air in our lungs right now, we breathe in all the way to the 4 seconds. We want to have a full lung of air, like no room left in the lungs. So that's a full breath of air for 4 seconds. So we hold it. And then the same thing on the exhale. When we exhale, we want to get all of that air out. Nothing left in there. And you hold at the bottom. Sometimes that hold at the bottom is really tough because you let out all your air. You haven't taken in a breath of air for a period of time. So you can increase this. You can do 5 seconds, 6 seconds. Sometimes I do as much as 20 seconds. That gets challenging, right? And perhaps not on the first one, but after you do it like 10 times, your body starts to go through different changes. Now, I'm not recommending any beginners to start at 20 seconds, but give it a shot, right? Some people who have been diagnosed or believe that they're struggling with PTS, post-traumatic stress, a lot of times the hold can be activating. And so sometimes we'll cut the hold time in half, right? So maybe like 6-second breath in, hold it for 3 seconds, 6-second breath out, hold it for 3 seconds, that kind of thing. But it's definitely something that you can do at home. I have an Insight Timer channel. That's an app where I do some box breathing on there. It's all free. You can go check that out. and get your box breathing on. Outside of that, the types of breathing techniques are kind of limitless. Again, Insight Timer is a great resource for, there's a ton of free breathing exercises on there, almost endless. By the time we're done with the program, people have mastered 5 different techniques, and our results are extremely good. Generally, we're able to turn around people's sleep in a big way. We've had people come through the program they're at the end, if you know what I mean. We've even had people like fighting, and their friends are like, "No, you're going to do it," and kind of force them into the program, and they give it a shot, and we're able to have a complete transformation. And when you are able to get your sleep under control, right? No guarantees. Like, everybody's got a different situation, and a lot of it, goes into how much effort the person wants to put out. But if we're able to
Right.
get the sleep under control, it just affects everything. The life at home gets better. Hormonal, endocrine function gets better, so you feel better. You're making better gains in the gym. You have a better positive, more positive outlook on life. I've even had people that got a job promotion after finishing our program because you're just on top of your game. And the sad thing is that when you're sleep deprived, a lot of times you don't even really realize. I use the example of back in the teams. We did a lot of drinking in the teams, unfortunately. We're young, just getting after it, and we're out at, let's say, the Shore Club in Pacific Beach, San Diego there. We're out having a good time. Maybe it's the Navy Army game, and go Navy, beat Army. And maybe you have a couple drinks, you tie one on, and now it's time to go, right? You're like, I'm going to go to my car. And I'm going to get behind the wheel of my car after drinking. And your friends are like, dude, you do not need to be drinking. You turn around, and you're like, bro, I got this. I'm fine. And it's that same mentality. Maybe it's not a mentality. It's a lack of awareness on how inebriated you are. It's the same thing that we see with sleep deprivation. You don't really know how much of a zombie you are. You're just there. You're out of it. Your cognition has declined, and we know that after being awake for 20 hours or reducing your sleep period by 1 hour for 5 days straight, or in varying, it's too difficult to explain any one situation, but varying types of shift work, like, you can get to the point where your sleep deprivation gives you the same cognitive performance as being legally inebriated, like a 0.08. So sleep can absolutely, we can correlate that through psychomotor vigilance task. So that it's like the Lumosity thing, but you test your cognition and you can watch it get worse as you're sleep deprived. So it is what it is. These thoughts, being in sleep science, this stuff, it sometimes haunts me, but it keeps me motivated. I'm 100% dedicated to serving veterans and first responders. I also just opened up a private sleep practice, Sleep Genius, where I'm working with people one-on-one to really hit their goals. But this is my life. I'm dedicated to it. So.
Yeah, it's a beautiful thing, man. I can tell your dedication to it wholeheartedly. You're out there to help make a difference in other people's lives, and a lot of times, like you said, that self awareness of actually how much sleep you're actually getting, it rings true to me because there's times where I go, I don't remember what I was about to do, and it happens so
Yeah.
frequently that I'm like this zombie walking around my house. I'm just,
Yep.
my vessel is here, but my mind is not.
Yeah.
And I think really trying to harness or attempting to get the best sleep possible throughout your day and not relying on the Advil PM and the NyQuil and ZQuil or whatever is very, very important. I
Yeah.
personally went through it of having to almost rely on not NyQuil, but Advil PM,
Mm.
to be able to get the sleep, because either I need to get the sleep because I'm going back into work, 8 hours later to go work a 16-hour shift to then come home, get sleep, and do it all over again. So, I think it's very important that people make sure that they get the best sleep possible.
Yeah. Yeah, that's tough, man. And I will admit that I was addicted to NyQuil at one point in time. That was my vice to fall asleep, because I didn't understand. I didn't understand anything about sleep at the time. But it's a slippery slope. It's not good.
Yeah. All right. So you started the sleep genie stuff. What are some, other than getting good sleep and other than cognitive, obviously there's a lot of science behind it. What are some of the initial responses, positive responses, that people will be able to see in the first few days, first weeks of being able to get good sleep and being able to really hone in on their body, get their levels at the right, because your body naturally produces melatonin, testosterone, all that kind of stuff. What do you see with people or yourself of going through programs like this, of the benefits, the immediately seeing it or a couple weeks down the road?
Yeah, it's not going to be immediate. That's the challenge with establishing behavioral routines. So Dr. Jacobs at Harvard did studies at the FDA level where he tested cognitive behavioral therapy for insomnia. We'll call that CBTI, against the drugs, right? And we're talking about the FDA-approved sleep drugs. And of course, the sleep drugs outperformed CBTI in the short term, because there was an immediate effect of like, oh, I fall asleep. But that is a sedative-induced sleep, which does a couple of things. One, it's not real sleep, right? The drug affects your sleep cycles, but then it also builds a dependency. And these things are tested for short-term, never the long-term use like we see most people fall into, right? So there's better solutions, right? We want to solve the problem, not mask it with a pill. So when we go through the 62 Romeo program, what we're doing is establishing good sleep behaviors, right? So there's an element of sleep hygiene. There's an element of, actions, like the things that we do throughout the day. There's an element of routines, right? Both doing things that throughout the day that are going to help us with our sleep, as well as establishing a bedtime, right? Imagine that, a bedtime. We tell our kids to go to bed, but as adults, it's a little bit more difficult. Then, of course, we add in the relaxation techniques. And then there's a little bit about cognitive restructuring. And it's simply just looking at the negative things that we think about our sleep and reframing those as positive. Well, guess what? That is exactly the same thing that Dr. Jacobs did at Harvard with the FDA trials. Now, I came to this conclusion when developing the 62 Romeo program from my own sleep science research. I did not need Dr. Jacobs to tell me that this is the most effective approach to sleep. However, we did come to the same conclusion, ironically. Now, CBTI is, the T in there is therapy, right? So you need to be a therapist, you need to have a license, and all of that, which is absurd. This is very basic stuff. You don't need to have some type of advanced degree to be able to understand that the elements of getting better sleep. So because of that, we removed the T and replaced it with an E. So we do cognitive behavioral education for insomnia, as well as we add in a lot of other elements technologically that advance our program to be more effective than CBTI. So the result of those FDA trials overall were that CBTI blew the pills out of the water in every way, other than that immediate effectiveness. You pop a pill, right? So what we're able to achieve with CBTI, or CBEI is what we're doing in essence, is to have an overwhelmingly positive response. We're able to establish those routines that people can keep up in a healthy way for the rest of their life. So this is a solution, right? This isn't a pill that we sell you and make a profit and keep you hooked on for the rest of your life. This is a solution that if you stay dedicated and you do the 6-week program, that you can build a habit or a series of habits that stay with you for the rest of your life. Problem solved. That's what we're trying to do. Is there, a lot of profit surrounding that? No, no. The profit model is in getting someone or insurance or whatever to pay that price for that pill every single day for the rest of your life. We want to cure people, not mask the problem with a profit-based solution. So with that said, the results that you can see from going through a program, CBTI or our program, is improved outlook for your entire life. Like when you wake up in the morning and you feel like, wow, I feel great. I can really attack the world. When you are noticing that you're recovering from workouts faster, when you notice that you're sharper on the job, or you can think through things and recall things, memory is a big one, then you're getting good sleep. One of the things that, the first person to tell us that they see results is rarely the participant. Normally it is the spouse or the coworker that tells us, like, what are you doing? Like, this is really, like, you're like a new person. Because they're really starting, as you start to improve that sleep, they're really starting to get back in the game. And the goal is to be the best version of ourselves, right? So if we're getting, normal melatonin production, right? Our pineal gland in our brain should be producing melatonin. Then, and we have a schedule that allows the sleep pressure to build up. We're falling asleep successfully. We feel good about that. We're getting into deep sleep. We're producing those hormones. We're having the brain recovery, the muscle recovery, all these different things. We're going into dream sleep. We're sorting out cognitive dissonance throughout the day, maybe working on some of the traumas. And we're going through these cycles, and we just wake up and we feel amazing. Like, we're not smashing the alarm clock to go back to bed because we need more sleep. We wake up and are like, man, I just want to go work out, right? I want to go love my spouse. I want to go play with my children, right? That is where we want to be. And so those, just generally speaking, those are some of the things that you can expect when successfully navigating our program. Consequently, these are also sometimes the complaints that people come in with on the other side, right?
Gotcha. And does that run in line with your research surrounded by the impact of light and the sound and the temperature in the room that you actually are getting the sleep in?
We call that the Sleep Dojo, and it absolutely is a critical part of what we do. My original research in grad school was surrounding light, sound, and temperature. And how does that impact sleep from a neurological function, right? And so it turns out that those three things absolutely impact your sleep in a huge way. And so in the 62 Romeo program, as well as, I go over this stuff with one-on-one with the Sleep Genius program. Either way you look at it, like light, sound, and temperature impacts your sleep. And we have documentation and studies that talk about that prove, like, hey, here's what happens when you're sleeping in a noisy environment. We think it doesn't affect us. It absolutely affects us. So,
Yeah, I love it. And I think the mindset you say sleep dojo, people, train for a fight. You should train for your sleep. It's perfectly worded. You get in that mindset of, I'm going in there for a purpose, just like go into a ring for a purpose, for a fight, preparing for a fight. You're preparing for your sleep to be the best version of yourself. And it's really amazing what you're doing in the research and the impact that you're having on people. We talked before about other people you've worked with, and it's really inspiring to listen to you and what you've developed. And I definitely would want to be able to get more information about it personally as well, based on my work schedule and other first responders as well, because that shift work, I tell you, it's a rough one most of the time. And when I say I'm a zombie, that's not even touching the surface sometimes of how I feel, So I'll make sure that I put your socials for 62 Romeo, Sleep Genius, all that kind of stuff. And you can also check out, just type in, everybody's got TikTok now. Type in Rob Sweetman on TikTok and you'll see his videos come up. And that's how I got a hold of him. I've never messaged somebody on TikTok before, but I'm glad I tried it because you're bringing a lot to the table to help people. And some of your, even short videos, just that little bit of insight helps a lot, for everybody. So is there any words of wisdom that you can give to the listeners to be the best version of yourself and get the best sleep possible?
Well, I mean, we're dealing with a cultural bias in the United States of I don't need sleep, close another sale, burn and turn, like show up early, leave late. And that's okay in some regards, right? But when the culture leads to burnout, then what are we doing? Like, we have one life to live, and it's not quite as long as we think it is. And if our motivations are focused on, um, putting out at some career or making some level of money, I think that we need to reassess these cultural values, right? So, what I would say as words of wisdom are that let's reevaluate what is important, right? We want to get good sleep. We want to have good nutrition. We want to respect our body as a temple and really enjoy life to the maximum because it'll be over before you know it, right? We've got to take care of ourselves and our families. So that is most important.
Right. Excellent. Well, I appreciate you coming on, Rob, and sharing your knowledge with everybody. This is Everlasting Veteran with Rob Sweetman, the Sleep Genius, and you can check him out on TikTok. He's got multiple different social media platforms. I'll be putting it up on everlastingveteran.com, and you can check him out and check out 62 Romeo and the amazing stuff that he has going on to help you with your sleep and overall improvement of your life for you first, being the best version of yourself so you can be the best version of yourself for somebody else as well. Thank you, Rob, for coming on.
From the cannons,
Thanks, Ryan.
when the smoke clears, we're still standing. Yes, we stand our ground.
You're listening to Everlasting
From the
Veteran.
cannons.